Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Sons and Daughters of Liberty. I'm your host, Drew. Today I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to talk about a subject that some people are talking about, but I'm going to cover a little bit differently. I'm going to talk about what they're not talking about. And it is an interesting subject. Before we get there, I'd like to bring your attention to the screen that I'm sharing to worldly.com. It is an awesome website that is in the development. As you can see, it's the free speech all-in-one social network. Christina Kraft is the CEO and founder of Worldly.com, and they are currently working on developing this platform. I recommend people check it out. She's awesome. She listens. She's wanting people's feedbacks, the things you want to see on here, the changes that need to be made to make it what we're all looking for. She has an awesome development team that's done some awesome work, fixed some of the bugs that I had mentioned, and things I'd like to see. They just recently updated the events, so it's a lot easier to create your events and get your time zone right. It's easy to work with. There's nothing complicated about it. That's what I like. I have talked to her a little bit, and I know what's some of the future projects that are coming. Like I said, it's still under development. The more feedback she can get from us in these communities that's looking for a place, it requires patience, as all things do. When we're when somebody's trying to build something for all of us that we want, like, the ability to live stream, that is eventually coming here. The ability to upload all your videos and stuff all in one place. Everything that we like from all these other places, plus some. That's what's got me so drawn and wanting to, share this with everyone. So if you got time, stop by, check it out. It is, like I said, an awesome site. I mean, it's still under development, but it's got some amazing features and it's got some amazing promise for all of us that are looking for a social platform that has it all. It doesn't have it all yet, but it's going to. It's going to have that and so much more. So stop on by, get to know Christina Taft, check it out. And of course, now everything wants to refresh. Now, give me a second, guys, while I share these links. I haven't got that far yet. Like I said, it takes about 20 minutes for me to get the other link shared across the platforms that I'm on. Speaking of new platforms, I've also finally got approved for Steemit, and now I am fully set up on Steemit, DTube, and DLive, so I can actually live stream from there as well. All these places, there are tools, there are utility things. It's a place where we can all come and gather and spread our message. The more platforms, the different types of audience you guys reach. And that is very important, especially in this day of age where everybody wants to seem to censor people for topics. We always have to have our backup. I mean, I even have a Twitch, but that's, worst case scenario backup because it's set up for my gaming back when I used to game, so I have to do some work to it. And, and then now it's like topics like this, the HR 6054 Unmasking Antifa Act of 2018. It sounds good. In fact, I kind of agree until I start thinking about how open-ended it is. And I got links in the description as well. One to the actual bill that's been introduced in Congress, so you guys can read it and stay up to date on it. Follow it, as well as an article from the Hill where they're talking about it. As I was reading through this, I see the open-endedness of it, what's left for interpretation. We all agree we've seen this used and abused. But I think that's where the glitter is on this. We want that, anonymity to be taken away from those groups of people that want to use a mask to do violence, try to get away with things. And that's just the surface. We're not looking past the surface. We're just looking at the shiny object, the thing that is glittering, that's resonating the most with us. This law, actually, there's 18 states that have similar laws to unmasking. It was used in some states to unmask KKK members that committed violent acts while masked. But with all things, let's talk about the cons, because there's plenty of pros. I see all the pros. So do you guys. That's why many of you would be straight for this. It resonates with us. And it does. Because we've seen it, how it's been used in action. How people have used it to abuse abuse things. But there's so much that's being left unsaid. And those are the things I want to talk about. How about for you citizen journalists out there, or those that go to these protests as first aid and medical support? You realize if you put a mask onto a gas mask or a surgical mask or a filtered mask or so much as a bandana, that is considered could be considered a mask. That's how open-ended this is. I mean, you're there to protect yourselves from the tear gas and stuff, chemicals that be in the air. But they're not going to look at that. They're going to treat you just like they treat everybody else, and you could be facing 15 years in prison. This is how this law could be abused because it is that open-ended. You know, because we've seen how things happen. We've seen how when things get out of hand, the police are just going to corral everybody. And if you're wearing a mask, you might just get caught up into the very ones that instigated in the first place. This is just, to me, I'm seeing it as another tool to go after citizen journalists, people that are out there peacefully protesting and peacefully expressing their rights. Like I said, all things that glitter is not gold, and there's many aspects of this that look good on the surface, sound good. I mean, we're all for it, but there's no stopping where this verbiage in this law goes. Could they use it to start unmasking people on the internet that hide behind masks? People that are into the anonymous groups. People that, like me, sometimes don't feel like being on cam. In a sense, I'm using this image to mask who I am. See, the word masking can go many ways, or the unmasking, people that use voice recognition software to change their voice. You know, that form of protection. So we need to always be on top of these things, especially when the verbiage is left so open-ended. But even farther, what aren't they saying? See, we sometimes forget to look at what's not being said, the actual agenda, because so many people are going to jump on this. I've heard Mike Cernovich jump on this. I've heard a few Democratic part members of Congress jump on that. That should be a warning sign right there for some of you. So let's talk about what they're not talking about. Let's talk about facial recognition, biometrics. It's coming. It's all over. It's already in the process, in the making, already being used to this day. So if they can't use our image here on the internet, or if we're at a protest, they can't film us or take a picture of our image because we're wearing a mask, or because we're wearing a surgical mask, a bandana. Does that not make us in violation of this law? Think about these things. Think about the agenda that's yet to unfold, the real purpose behind the law. Think about how far it can be used and stretched. That's why it's so important that everything that is written be concrete. No room for interpretation. They use that as legal room to implement their agendas, their manipulations. Because I know so many, I've heard everybody, I've watched, you know. Hence why I didn't first talk about this when it first came out about a week ago. What's the point? Because you need to sit back, watch, see how people react, observe, read into it, understand where it's been used before and how it's been abused. This thing is left for so much abuse. But in the end goal is not the end goal, not to unmask everyone so they can use their facial recognition biometric systems, their AIs to detect your voice anomalies. In a sense, this act could be used against anonymous. It could be used against people like me who don't like showing their face every time on the computer. Granted, it don't say nothing about the internet, but it's open-ended. It's left for interpretation. If I can think about it and see it being implemented, you don't think the very same people that's trying to push this into law have already thought about it? And that's the danger. That's the danger with all this that's going on. Yes, we're all sick and tired of groups like Antifa and, those that want to hide and commit violence. But it's too open-ended. Guys, friend, by the way. Yeah. You see, guys, you can subscribe, follow these things so you can stay on top of it. Right now, it's just in text form. It's only been in one committee. You can see the actions. Just go through some of this for people that are not used to coming here. Because I want you to see this and understand this. It's how you can follow this and stay on top of this. A bill to amend Title 18 United States Code to provide penalty enhancements for committing certain offenses while disguised and for other purposes to the Committee on the Judiciary. Oh, so it's the Committee of the Judiciary that actually is going to interpret what a disguise is. Who introduced it? By Mr. Donovan for himself, Mr. King of New York, Mr. Budd, and Mr. Gosar. So we can follow the history of this. We can follow, as we come back to here, the composers. See who's put this in. And we can see what their stances have been on other things. Right now, the three composers has been Representative King Peter, Republican of New York, Representative Ted Budd, Republican of New York City, and Representative Paul A. Gassar, Representative of Arizona. So we have three states. We know New York has passed and labeled Antifa as a domestic terrorist group, which I agree. I think that should be done at the federal level as well, just for the way they've acted, the violence, the riots they've caused. They are not a peaceful protesting group. These are the original composers. And let's see what committees are tied into this. It's always interesting to follow this. The House Judiciary Committee. Now, who do we know? Who's all on the House Judiciary Committee? Oh, that's not going to work. So further do your research to find out who's all on the Judiciary Committee, what they're going to amend and add into it, how they're going to interpret it. That's important when we start dealing with bills like this. Now here's the text version. To amend Title 18 United States Code to provide penalty enhancements for committing certain offenses while in disguise and for other purposes. Now, do you guys understand why I mentioned the internet? That could be classed under other purposes. Let me jump back here and check my chat. Alright guys, while I'm sharing screens on this, if I'm actually sharing screens on this, which I don't think I am, because I'm sharing something else. Now I am. Alright guys, I went through these sections here. The actions, titles, composers to committees. So you guys know what I was talking about earlier since I wasn't sharing screens. In the House of Representatives, June 8th, 2018, a bill to amend Title 18 United States Code to provide penalty enhancements for committing certain offenses while in disguise and other purposes. There's a very key word here, other purposes. Those other purposes could be interpreted as the internet by such things. It's the end. Like I said, we got to pay attention to verbiage. That's how they screw us every time. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America, Congress, and several. Section 1, short title. This act may be cited as the Unmasking Antifa Act of 2018. Interference. Thank you to the new subscriber. Interference with protected rights while in disguise. Chapter 13 of Title 18 United States Code is amended by inserting after Section 249 the following. So this is the section that they're adding. In general, whoever, whether or not acting under a color of law while in disguise, including while wearing a mask, guys, see? Mask. What is a mask? A surgical mask is a mask. A gas mask is a mask. A bandana that conceals part of your face is a mask. Using software to change your voice is a mask. While wearing a mask, injures, oppresses, threatens, or intimidates any person in the state or territory, commonwealth, possession, or district in the free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege secured by the Constitution or laws of the United States, or because of his having so exercised the same, shall be fined under the title imprisoned not more than 15 years or both. Rule of construction. Nothing in this section shall be construed so as to deter any law enforcement officer from lawfully carrying out the duties of his office, and no law enforcement officer shall be considered to be in violation of this section for unlawfully carrying out the duties of his office or lawfully enforcing ordinances and laws of the United States, District of Columbia, and of the several states, or any political subdivision of the state. For purposes of preceding sentence, the term law enforcement officer means any officer of the United States, the District of Columbia, a state, or a political subdivision of the state, who is empowered by law to conduct investigations of or make arrests because of offenses against the United States, the District of Columbia, a state, or a political subdivision of the state. And what is a political subdivision of the state? It could be any of the alphabet gangs or agencies. Clerical amendment. The table of sections for Chapter 13 of 18 United States Code is amended by inserting after the item related to Section 249 the following. Destroying buildings or property within special maritime and territorial jurisdiction while in disguise. Section 1363 of Title 18 United States Code is amended by adding at the end of the following: whoever, during the commission of the offense under this section, wears a disguise, including a mask, shall, in addition to any term of imprisonment otherwise imposed under this section, be imprisoned for 2 years. And we all know how this is going to go. Yes, this is being brought up, and this is just the rough draft. That's the problem. It's a rough draft that is very upended for interpretation. Because, like I said, I mean, the key phrase here in this one was or for other purposes. So we got to think of those other purposes. What other purpose could they be referring to? Where does the line stop? Does it just refer to things that happen in the street? But technically, when we're in our house, even doing these live streams, somebody takes offense or thinks we're making a threatening comment, and we're not showing our face, or we're wearing a mask, or we're manipulating our voice. Therefore, we're masking our identity. And like I said, even going further from that, they could just say because you've put on a gas mask or a surgical mask to protect yourself from the pepper spray. Oh yeah, Rob, that's what I was looking at and starting to, you know, how we do it. We weigh the pros and cons, and we start thinking about it, thinking about what isn't being said. Why all of a sudden, even though some states had a law similar for the KKK, and they have enforced it, and I'm sure if we look and start digging deep enough, we'll find where they've abused it, where they've rounded up people that's wore just bandanas or gas masks or surgical masks because it is a mask. It's concealing part of your face. It's concealing part of your identity. And we know with the push for the facial recognition, the biometric systems, they want to be able to see everybody. They don't want nobody hiding behind anything. That's what we have to look at. Because you have a right to protect yourself. You have a right to protect your identity when you're talking about things, because that is part of that freedom you have. Yes, I love the sound of it because, like so many, we've seen what Antifa has done. We've seen what Black Lives Matters have done, and other groups. This is their way of using those groups to do away with something that others actually use for protection, whether it's protecting your lungs and your health while at these rallies and protests, or protecting your identity. See, they could turn around and say this. Let's use the debacle that happened yesterday with the press briefing. How that guy, didn't want to show his face. They could actually use this to unmask him because he was protecting his identity. You guys got to think about those things. Don't take everything at face value. Don't take things because they sound so good. Have you ever heard that expression? If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, and you probably really need to start dissecting it, thinking about all the things that could be later used in it that wasn't written in the verbiage because it was left so open-ended. Because we've seen what's been happening on the social media platforms. We've seen how they want to censor people or ban them or call them unsafe. You don't think these platforms won't take this law and twist it to their means because it's left for interpretation? You don't think other people's going to see it the way I did and try to use it to go after people? Sometimes we need to live by this. Remember the other saying, be careful what you ask for, because you might just get it and it's probably not going to be what you really wanted. Yes, and Rob actually made a very good point. And, you know, people don't realize how damning the Patriot Act was. They don't realize that they went around to every, in the prison system, they went around to every gang member, making them sign a piece of paper admitting they were domestic terrorists. Oh, you guys are thinking, oh, they're gang members. They should be, right? Whoa, 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 whoa. Let's halt that right there because it wasn't gang members, just gang members. It was people that had other religious beliefs in the system that they also nailed and labeled, much like they used it to label our veterans as a threat. And it would be given an extra 10 years. Why am I reading this? I'm actually sharing screens. You guys can see what's being said. New crimes committed because they were domestic terrorists. You know, you guys don't think about the, as time goes on, how they implement stuff. They pass a bill that sounds like something we really want that we'd approve of, but it's so open-ended and left for interpretation that they slide things in or they use the play on word game. I mean, I think some people's going to disagree with me here and not even like what I say next. This is my opinion, my view, and my understanding of the Constitution being black and white. This violates the Constitution as it is written, as it is meant to be interpreted, because it's taking away your protection to protect your identity, protect your family, your friends. This is the reason why we have so much problem with people thinking it's okay to be doxing people. And you could use this very law to threaten somebody and manipulate them and control them, which therefore makes this law unconstitutional. I do agree on the aspects that while wearing a mask to commit a crime is a crime, but it's not a crime because the act of the crime is what they're supposed to be charged with. This makes this actually unconstitutional because it is double jeopardy and cruel and unusual punishment. Because now you're taking and giving them more time that supersedes the time for the crime they committed. For some people, that's okay. They think all people that commit a crime deserve to be there. But we're now talking about petty crimes, like the guy selling weed, which would be 6 months county jail sentence for probably his first offense, if that, to here, take 15 years. An unjust consequence. Like I said, I'm going to take the unpopular route with this one. I see the advantage of it. I see the reason why people would want it. Because we have people that want to hide behind those things and commit heinous acts. But at the same time, realize what you're going to be giving up by supporting an act like this. Think about what is not being said, the underlying agendas that could be in this. How it could be used to affect even you. Guys, all things that glitter is not gold. There's a reason that saying was created and designed. I'm not going to tell you where it was originally created from. Do your research. Like you should be researching these very laws, why you should be questioning every possibility of interpretation of this, even the things that are being left unsaid. That is your due diligence. Then think about it and ask yourself, would you support it? Because it has a potential to do harm over good. It has a potential to further push facial recognition because it would be a crime to disguise yourself to hide your identity, even though you're just doing it so you don't get fired from work or doxxed, so you don't endanger your family, or so when you want to testify. Thank you. So when you want to testify because you're a whistleblower against a big corporation, they can't use this very law to unmask you and potentially use it to hold you and threaten you with a crime. I'm sure there's many people that's going to disagree with what I said. That's cool. Bring your arguments to the table. But also remember, there's pros and cons to everything. And you better bring the cons as well, because the cons are what we should be looking at. How will this be abused and used against us? It is always in the loopholes, the gray area. Law is nothing more than a two-edged sword that is up for interpretation, and it's your job to sell the interpretation of how you believe it and get the judge or the jury to buy it. It is your interpretation of the law, and every law has its loopholes. Case in point, YouTube, Google, Twitter, Facebook, every social media platform out there has a TOS that's so up for interpretation it's not even funny. It is how they choose to interpret it. If they don't like what you're saying, they can interpret it in a way that they can remove you. Period. Guess what? It's legal. Because they cover that in their little fine print of TOSs. We are not liable or responsible for any of the content put up on here. We cannot be sued or brought to a court of law. Right in the TOS. So all those people that want to go, that's why you can't get a lawyer to go after them. But you can get a lawyer to go after Twitter because Twitter recognizes themselves as free, promoted themselves as a free speech platform in their mission statement. So therefore, they are in breach of contract. No matter what their TOS is, they're breaching their mission statement. They're breaching the contract that we signed up on. That's where that federal judge got it right. Judge got it right, not drudge. Plus, we're putting this in the hands of the Justice Committee. And we've seen how messed up that committee is. We've seen how they screwed the pooch on the Patriot Act, the 9/11, and so many other things that they've done here of late. We see the rhetoric between all sides, all the labels, how they choose to interpret something like the word immigration. Instead of Democrats calling it illegal immigration, they only call it immigration when what we're talking about and what they're talking about in the committee is illegal immigration. It has nothing to do with immigration. The devil is in the details. Always is. Just like with this, the devil is in the details. The devil is in what's not being said. The fact that you're that medic out there that's, there with the bottle of water milk to help treat people, first aid kit, you're wearing a surgical mask or a gas mask to protect yourself, guess what? You just committed a crime. Or you're there peacefully protesting, something happens down the road 5, 10 blocks away, and they start rounding up the people that are peacefully protesting under the Constitution because they're wearing a surgical mask, gas mask, bandana, anything that could be. And we've seen this in full effect in D.C. during the Trump inauguration. That even wearing glasses and hat that mask your face, keyword there, mask, because what is a mask? Well, when we mask something, we're using it to conceal our identity, to hide ourselves. We're putting sunglasses on to mask the sun from blinding us and burning our eyes. We put a hat on so the bill masks our face with shade. Understand how the term mask can be interpreted. Some people, like Anonymous, use voice recognition masking. It is a mask. Plus they put on a mask and to protect their identities. And they have that right. This law can undermine that right. This law can undermine the whistleblowers or those that are put into protective custody and protected from being seen while testifying on the stand because they're masking themselves. They can be forced to unmask or be potentially threatened with a crime, which would deter people from doing just that, being a whistleblower, standing up for what is right. Oh, the slippery slope that we seem to be on. Unfortunately, it's never the ones that cause the problems that really get punished. It's the ones that are trying to use that stuff to protect them that end up being the ones that punished. Everything is designed. When stuff like this comes out, it was designed to. Look, when they started making a big deal out of it. That's right, when Antifa started doing what they were doing, around the same time they were really pushing for facial recognition, biometrics. And nobody really understands the full consequences of the biometric system. They don't understand, like Ohio in 2012, our whole system has to be part of the biometrics, including now if I want to travel by plane, I have to have a biometric ID. How long before they abuse that and say, well, if you want to travel by bus or train, you have to have a biometric ID. Why? Because you already have to have the biometric ID to travel by car. Yes, it is, but nobody questioned it back then. But unfortunately, when you start adding the things up and start talking about it, until things happen, it will never be able to be argued as unconstitutional. But the first time they round up an innocent person, or they take it a step farther and implement it on the internet, it becomes something that can be argued as unconstitutional. It can be argued that if they use it to unmask somebody to dox them, that's unconstitutional. When you take the right of a person to protect themselves away, that becomes unconstitutional. Because there's 18 states that actually have this law, in a sense, written into their laws. And its sole purpose was to unmask the KKK members that were committing violent acts. And yes, many of those 18 states are just happen to be southern states. I think there's like two or three that are northern and western. I would be okay with this law if it was worded properly, to where there was nothing left for interpretation, to where they wouldn't be able to use it against people that are just protecting their identity or protecting their health. But we all know full damn well that's not even the reason for introducing this bill. Because apparently this was already a law. They're just amending and adding a subsection to an already existing law. Why would you want to amend it unless your goal of thinking is to prevent people from getting not getting caught up in the facial recognition. Exactly. It is already a ban in the US. All they are doing is adding an amendment to broadening that ban. So if it's already a law and we've already seen them use it, why do we need to amend it? That's the question you have to ask. Why do we need to amend this bill? Then the answers become quite obvious. With the push for facial recognition, biometrics, the ability to unmask people, it becomes a way to control the narrative and the means to control the narrative. But unfortunately, most people are going to think this is a bill where it's actually an amendment, and actually clearly states it's amendment to amend Title 18. This is not actually a bill, guys. This is an amendment. But of course, it's got to go through, Congress to be approved. What are they amending? Also amending to it? The fine and prison time that you could serve, which there in itself, the 15 years for wearing a mask is unconstitutional because it is considered cruel and unusual punishment. And the worst part of it is, yes, till cases start happening and people actually can afford the legal process to take it and push it to the Supreme Court, it will remain in effect. That is the other broken part of the legal system. The fact that it takes so long to get something to the Supreme Court, and the fact that they can usually bankrupt you before you can even get it out of the state level and into the federal level. Because there's a process that you have to go through. Then it's left to when the Supreme Court decides to hear it. If they wish to hear it, they have the right to shoot it back down to the lower court. It's not an easy process to get something to the Supreme Court level. Actually, it's only in 18 states. Actually, Anonymous does it. People that don't want to be doxxed, people that actually don't want their family members to get hurt will conceal their identities. So yes, it affects more than just Antifa robbers. It affects more than just the criminals who it's designed to affect. It affects everyone. But that's what you pointed out is what exactly everybody sees and thinks. They don't think about the others because why? It's only the criminals that do it. What about the person that's protecting his identity while at a rally because he works for a union and the union doesn't support that and he could be fired and it's happened? Or the very whistleblower. Or, as I've pointed out, those that go to these protests and rallies as medics. Or the citizen journalist that is there that will have a gas mask or a mask to protect themselves from the pepper spray in case things get out of hand. They're wearing a mask, so therefore they broke the law, whether they commit a crime or not. The crime's already been committed by the mob that's running rampant in the streets, so therefore everybody is recognized as them because you're wearing a mask. And I think it was funny they tried to amend and clarify that law enforcement can wear the mask. Oh, no, not even a little bit. The law, they are citizens of the United States, so therefore they cannot, by the same law, cannot wear a mask. Just like any gun ban that they would oppose, put into motion, affects our police department because they are citizens. Sometimes it's kind of important to point those little things out too. But you're talking about Muslims. Actually, they're not affected by this law. Actually, clearly, the amendment they made to the religious part of this, which was we read down where. I know I see that somewhere. Yeah, because I was pretty sure I said something about clerical. Where was that? Yes, clerical amendment. Yes, a mask is anything that conceals your identity. Wearing a hat and glasses is a mask. People have been arrested for it. People were told during the inauguration that they could not wear a hat and glasses to conceal their identity. In DC. But yet, why would you wear sunglasses on a sunny day and a hat? As a form of protection from the sun, not to conceal. See, some masks are for protection. Surgical masks, gas masks are for protection. Just like using a device to mask your voice is a mask. In the end, the way I see this as, it's just a means to further cram facial recognitions down our throat. They don't want anybody being able to cheat the system, beat the system. They want to know your identity. They want to know everything that you do, hence why I've also integrated biometrics into this. The very things that people aren't even talking about when it comes to the unmasking. Like all things, do people abuse wearing a mask? Yes. Do the people abuse masking their identities? Yes. But there's so many people that do it for a reason of safety and protection as well. Because in the end, unmasking people, is it going to stop the violence? Nope. Did it ever stop the KKK? Nope. KKK still does rallies wearing their full hoods because it's perfectly legal as long as violence doesn't erupt. It's perfectly constitutional as long as they are expressing their freedom of speech through expression instead of action. When they revert to action, that's when it becomes unconstitutional. That's when it becomes a crime. Which makes you ask, why the need to amend this law that's already in place? Why is only 18 states enforcing this law? Then you start seeing the bigger agenda, the bigger picture. It has nothing to do with the law itself. It has to do with the new implementations that they're bringing in to monitor, to track people. It is the very thing that they'll use against everybody. But really, good, I think that's how you pronounce the first part. I'm bad with names. I butcher them, so forgive me for it. But you bring up some very great points. Very great counters to what I've been talking about. It's important to have those points so people can see all sides of things. I'm bringing up the side that nobody wants to talk about. That's the importance, being able to have chat rooms like this and interacting. Because, I could take it one more step farther. I do agree with what you're saying, except for the good guys do wear masks too. The good guys, that guy's being the medic for the people in the crowd. The good guys, that citizen journalist that's reporting it as they see it, letting all of us, and those are the very ones that'll get caught up in this. The good guys are the ones that use the mask to protect themselves and their families. I know plenty of good people that go to these events that have to wear masks because of fear of being fired or fear of being doxxed. Sadly, the days of cops and robbers are gone where, yes, only the bad guys wore masks, but that's not entirely true. We can go clear back in history to the Wild Wild West. Everybody wore a bandana. Didn't mean they were bad guys. We can go farther back in history. People wore helmets, wore full helmeted armor to protect their face. By no means am I justifying what Antifa's done. Like I stated earlier, I fully agree with what New York did by labeling them domestic terrorists because that's all they've done. Everywhere they go, violence erupts. But it also goes to the point I always make. There's good apples and there's bad apples. Instead of blaming the bad apples, the whole group gets blamed. And when we're dealing with this, hi Christina, when we're dealing with this, even the good people are going to be treated as if they were the bad guys, the bad apples. Because so many people use this. Sons and Daughters of Liberty, that's a logo, but they could say that's a mask because it's not my real face. Why do they want to see your real face? Well, we can go really down the rabbit hole on that and get a little esoteric on it. If I can see your real face, I have a greater focal point. That's why some people don't show their faces on the internet. They understand that very concept. I'm giving somebody access that knows other knowledges and things that they could use that just to be able to get to me even easier. But then again, some of us know the trick to that too. It's just an image. It has no meaning or power. Therefore, it has none. Just like words have no meaning or power unless we give them. Just like these thumbs up, thumbs down emojis, they have no meaning or power unless we give them that. I see this so many different ways that this HR 6054 amendment can be abused and used against us. One, because it's so open-ended for interpretation. Not everybody's going to see it as black and white. You know, us everyday citizens, we look at it and read it. They're going to see it for what they think it says. We see it all the time, dealing here on the social media platforms with the open-ended, left for interpretation TOSs. We see it every day in the legal system. The law is left for interpretation. How a person interprets it, how they sell that interpretation to the jury or judge. The prosecuting attorney is going to use a different interpretation of how they see it to convict you. So therefore, you could be the good guy that was just wearing a surgical mask because of the pollution being so high that day and the pollen being so high that day, but guess what? Something happened and they round up everybody that's wearing a mask, and now you could be facing 15 years and a fine. And you did nothing but what your constitutional right was to freely express yourself and freedom of speech. You did not commit no action. You just got rounded up because some idiots knew they could provoke something and get a few innocent bystanders. Like I said, I'm not everyone's cup of tea. My job's here to make everybody think and question things. You know, look beyond what is being said. Do I agree something that needs to be done against these people that hide themselves to commit these crimes? Yes, but there's laws already for that. Start charging them and not just giving them a slap on the wrist every time they commit that crime. You broke a law, therefore, charge them with the law for being broken. And that's where it gets down to the facial recognition part. They want to be able to run run your face through a database and, oh, that was you. Facial recognition is nothing more, is just another form of fingerprinting yourself. But they want something that it can be instantaneous instead of waiting for hours for your fingerprints to come back. Facial recognition is very horrible. And I'm going to tell you why. Every last one of us out there, for the most part, has a twin that we're not even related to. I've met mine. I've had people when I was, you know, living in someplace else. I come back, they're like, "Well, we thought that was you. You've been here. Where do you know?" And they showed me pictures. I'm like, "Wow, damn, that's my twin." Yes, and it's actually quite common, and people don't even realize it. They use the word throw around facial recognition as safety, as national security. But it's just another form to track everybody. We see it, how it can be abused and used. That's why it's important to pay attention to laws and bills that come about or amendments to bills and laws that are coming about and actually think about it further than what is being stated. What are you willing to give up? What freedoms are you willing to give up? Are you willing to give up the ability to protect yourself so you don't get fired, doxxed, so your family don't get threatened? Because that's one of the very same things that this bill is going to do away with. Because it doesn't matter if you're peacefully protesting, if you have a protagonist or provocateur that starts something, they'll use this to round everybody up that's wearing a mask, regardless if you're peacefully protesting or not. And guess what? By this law, you have committed a crime for wearing that mask. Whether it be a gas mask, surgical mask, glasses, shades, bandana, because it's used to conceal, even though you're using it to protect yourself. And they could take it even farther with how left for interpretation of it is, as it clearly states, and for other purposes, which is not defined, that is left up to the Judiciary Committee to decide the other purposes. When we start reading laws, we have to pay attention to the verbiage, how it is used, how it can be open and left for interpretation. How do we interpret it? How does you, the viewer, interpret it? That's why I said really good made some great points, because that's how so many people will interpret this. So now we got to look at all the cons. We have to interpret it, the possibilities, that the ways it can be interpreted. And the way I'm seeing it, the way we see things going, I see this as something that is going to be used against every single one of us. A means to censor, control, to stop whistleblowers, to stop people that don't like showing themselves on cam. The very same people that go to these places that want to protect their families and make sure they still have a job after they leave the rally or protest. We've seen too much of the doxing in the last couple years, which personally I think there should be a law against that. Yes, but there is. It's called defamation of character. When you intentionally use something to attack a person to cause them to lose their job because you know that particular, I use the word unions because there's some unions that are strictly political labeled based, and if you vote against that and speak of it, you'll lose your job. If you attend a rally that they do not support, you will lose your job. There's documented cases of it. It happens, and it keeps happening. Introduce this law, and they're going to use and abuse it. Even though we'd like to believe it's there for our protection, it's there to stop groups like Antifa. That's why they use the word Antifa, by the way, guys. Use the word Antifa, we all seen what they do, so we're instantly going to jump on board because they're calling it the Unmasking Antifa Act. But when you read it, it's just not Antifa. But how many people know that? How many people's actually read the text and is actually going to follow it and stay on top of it to see what gets added to it, what changes before it even gets passed as a bill? Hence, all that glitters is not gold. But so many people are going to jump on this because it says unmasking Antifa, when it's actually unmasking anonymous, unmasking the people that are there trying to protect their health, or protect or be the medics, people that are there to protect their identity and families, to keep their jobs. I don't sound like just Antifa now, does it? And it's not worded that way either, as solely Antifa. It's worded as anyone wearing a mask or using a mask to disguise themselves. Which therefore, if you're disguising yourself, they can't use facial recognition to see who was there. And like I said, I can see it being used even further because we know how these social media platforms like to take things, twist things, and abuse things because it is that open-ended. It doesn't just state in a public place. In fact, it doesn't state a place at all. So, very much so. Because I'm using a logo, because I'm not showing my face, I'm using an image, I've broken the law. If this was a law, I've hid my identity. Even though we know I haven't done that, because go and find my image anywhere you want. You can go back through my videos and find where I've freely talked with no image, not hiding anything. But we know how these things work. We've seen it. They're always looking at an excuse to find a way to censor people. find a way to get people in line to the status quo. And this is how this will be abused and used, in my opinion and view, the way I'm seeing it, the way I'm reading and looking further down the road with the things they're trying to implement with the rhetoric. Yes, I'm pointing out the cons. We know the pros, because the pros is what's going to get everybody to jump on board on this. I mean, hell, it even got Mike Cernovich to jump on board on this. But he's seen firsthand the violence of Antifa. But we're just not talking about Antifa, because nowhere in the text is it specifically singling out Antifa. It is singling out everyone that wears a mask, no matter what the mask is, because it doesn't interpret what a mask. They don't define what uses of a mask. That's the key. That's the point. The definition. So that no longer becomes up for interpretation to a committee that just so happens might not like what you're talking about and decides to use it against you. That's the point I'm trying to make. We all have good points. We all have good opinions and views on this. I've seen so many people talk about it. They point out all the good things about it. Nobody's talking about the consequences or how it can be misused. So yeah, I'll be that guy. Yeah, like I stated, I agree with what New York and a couple other states have done, labeling the group Antifa as a domestic terrorist. But unfortunately, is all Antifa members domestic terrorists? No. Once more, we get back to blaming the whole group for the actions of the bad apples, which is something we have to be careful of. You know, why do we need amendment and another law in place when we have laws in place that is for the people that commit the crime? And yes, I know where I can see the other side of that argument. Well, if they're hiding their face, it's hard to figure out who they were. Yeah, right. Not in this day and age. Ask any bank robber or any criminal that's wore a mask that's sitting in prison right now. Didn't matter, they wearing a mask. They left DNA behind. They left a fingerprint behind. They bragged about it on social media. Everybody leaves a footprint that's trackable. The fact is, they arrest how many of these people? Then we see a couple weeks ago that various members of these Antifa groups in certain states just got slaps on the wrist instead of doing time. We saw actual due time. One person got sacked 10 years, where another person, here, we slap you on the wrist, do this 24 hours community service, no probation, no jail time, even though you committed a violent act and broke the law. Oh, now that don't happen in our legal system, not at all, right? So that person is going to do his little punk ass 24 hours community service. Guess what? He's going to be right back out there doing what he just got charged for. Knowing, because I live in this state, and this state promotes this, we even tell our cops to stand down. I'm going to get away with it. I'm not going to get punished. Yeah, sad reality. It's always manipulated and used against the innocent that don't deserve to be punished like that. They're the ones that end up getting punished more severely. Once in a blue moon do we see the real bad guy do real time and get the proper punishment. In most cases, they use scenarios like this to condemn a whole group of people. This very case scenario, how many people out there? Let's look at the Million Man Mask March that Anonymous does around the world. Since by this law, that would be a crime. But most people are not even going to catch that point because of the way it's worded. I don't agree with a lot of things that Anonymous does because I see that group, for the most part, is made up of a bunch of people that just want to hide behind something and not actually do anything, people that want to be hackers and hide behind the anonymous thing. But then again, I do know true members of Anonymous who are true Anonymous, and they're a very different story. Things that they do, things that they talk about, bring about, can be undermined just by this law. And that's why I pointed out protective witnesses that aren't put on the stand for everybody to see. That's why I pointed out whistleblowers, because they are masking themselves. They're masking their identity to protect themselves. That's why I pointed out the good people that go to these places as medics. That's why I point them out, because they are wearing a mask. Even though most of those guys, clear label, Red Cross, red and white cross, right on their chest. It's just letting you know that's a medic. But we know how that's going to be abused because he's wearing a surgical mask, or like I said, so much left for interpretation. He's wearing a baseball hat and glasses, therefore he's masking himself. And for those that don't believe that, i.e., I refer to the presidential inauguration and the laws that were put in place for those that wanted to come and partake, and those that wanted to protest. There was a ban on anything that concealed your face. Glasses, hats, all banned. So do we want to live in a world where we can't even wear sunglasses? Or a world that because I choose to put a different color of contact in to change my eye color? Oh, yep, I'm changing my identity, so therefore a contact could be considered masking. That's how open-ended this is. That's how left for interpretation this is. No, if they actually clearly define it, which they won't. That's the problem. They're never going to clearly define this. They never do. They want it open-ended. And that's why me, as a person, could never support such a bill. Doesn't mean you guys can't. You each have your own views and opinions, your own experiences. What I ask you to do is I ask you to question it. Start playing the word games. How can you interpret it differently from what it's already stating? How open-ended really is it is? Then ask yourself, is that something that I would support where it could actually be used against everyone and not as it's trying to word and to title it for? Because nowhere in that text does it says Antifa. It only says Antifa in the name. But in the actual amendment, it does not state Antifa. It states mask, disguise. And there's the other point. A mask, comma, disguise, comma, or for other purposes. Don't need to be a lawyer to understand the loopholes in there. While in disguise. But sadly enough, people aren't going to pay attention to those things. The few that do, we always fall in that category. We get it, we understand it, but too few in numbers. And most people, they're just going to interpret it as they see it. Oh, it's to unmask Antifa. Yes, we need that. Never question it, never think about it afterwards. That's why yeah, why I said even Mike Cernovich bit into this one and took it hook, line, and sinker. And I do get it from his perspective. He's seen the outright violence of Antifa. But the problem is, nowhere in the text of the amendment does it speak of Antifa. In fact, nowhere in the text or message does it even speak of the KKK. But, you know, these are the fun things that we talk about. No? If for any other purpose to make people start to really question things and think outside the boxes, not get caught up in the shiny substance of Unmasking Antifa Act 2018. Do your due diligence, go read it. Then start weighing the pros and cons. Start questioning how it can be used and abused. Then you might find yourself thinking on the same lines that I'm thinking and then seeing that it's not such a great thing. Or you may think it is. And that is your prerogative. Maybe you see something that I don't or haven't yet seen. You know, I sit here and take everybody's points, listen, try to put myself in your shoes to see it. But I also have my own experiences. I've seen how things work. I have a thorough understanding of it and watching how they abuse these things. And when I see something that's designed to manipulate people so they don't think twice of it and just support it, I have a real issue with it. I see it for what it is, an illusion meant to trick and deceive people. And so many people are going to be tricked and deceived by this one. Yay, we're finally going to unmask Antifa. Uh-huh. Nowhere in the text does it state Antifa. In fact, it clearly states anyone that wears a mask. But how many of you are going to know that? How many people are actually going to follow the link and go there and follow this as it develops, as they add and take away more to it? How many of you have already called your congressman to approve this without even questioning what you're actually calling them to approve? without even reading it and see that it states nothing about Antifa. They just used it to trick, manipulate, and deceive people. Something that is so shiny, something that some of us are so sick and tired of seeing, and they're going to use that to bait every one of us. Hell, they about baited me. Until I actually went and read it. Until I started thinking about it and questioning it. How could this be used? What are all the good things it can be used? Because yes, there's plenty of good things. Then I started, because I understand the Constitution, started questioning, well, is it constitutional or unconstitutional? Then you start opening up all these things. Then you start seeing the subversion that they use. You start seeing the possibilities, how this thing will be abused. Therefore, you're left with a decision to make. Support it or not. But at least you took the time to research it. You took the time to see everybody, because everybody that signs this, approves this, or denies it will be listed on this bill, as I showed you. Anybody that adds to this will be under composers, titles, actions. All these things here are very important. Anybody that adds to this amendment will be listed under the composer. When this becomes a law, it'll be listed who approved it. See, we have a chance to go and see how these people have taken stances on other things. Right now, there's only 3 composers. But I've seen a few Democrats throw support to this. So it will be interesting to watch this play out. It'll be interesting to watch other people bring their perspectives to this. Talk about it. Because that's what it's about for us. Learning from each other, listening to other people's opinions and views, whether we agree or disagree. Having conversations like we've had in this chat room. Because everybody makes a good point on this. Everybody has their opinion and view, how they interpret it. And that's what's important. That communication between all of us. Whether we agree or disagree with each other, it's a sharing of that information. Sharing of those opinions, those views, those experiences. It's the very thing that they don't want us to do. They don't like it when we question things. They don't like it when we think for ourselves. They really don't like it when we go against status quo. But keep this under an hour and a half. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for the new sub. I will warn the new subs now, I'm not everyone's cup of tea. I do come with a very heavy warning label on that. But know this. Things I talk about are my opinions, my views. Some of it, most of it's from my own experiences in life. But I don't know what you've experienced to make you think the way you think. You know, when we interact like this, we're learning from each other. We're seeing your points. And it's making us further question things. Maybe I got something wrong. Maybe I wasn't seeing something right. There's no right or wrong answer. Sometimes it comes right down to what we've experienced in life that make us see things a certain way. Sometimes it's being that guy who just wants to step outside the box to bring you a different narrative on this subject, playing the devil's advocate, because it's needed. It's needed to promote talking, conversations about things, questioning things. And for me, that's what it's about. So I hope you guys enjoyed. No, I picked a touchy subject for some, but no, it's in good taste that I did it to make you question it further and just not get caught up in Unmasking Antifa Act 2018. Sounds good. Great. But all that glitters is not gold, guys. Sometimes we have to look further beyond what is said. Sometimes we have to question the hidden agenda that's not being said. And that is important. You guys have a good evening. I will talk to you on the next one. Oh, yeah, one more plug before I go. This Friday at 11 p.m. Eastern Time, I will be joining Pirate Radio Podcast, do a live stream with them. I'm actually looking forward to it. It is Friday the 13th after all, my lucky number. And it's going to be an interesting show. Like I said, I'm not everyone's cup of tea. But I am thankful for the invitation to join them and have a different audience. And I welcome all of you on this channel to join me there this Friday night. I will see you Friday.